Shalom, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with my family. That's maybe one of the advantages that, unfortunately, the Corona have, that we can just bridge on places that are far. And I would never think to host Yom Hazikaron. Also admitting people while I'm speaking, so it takes me a minute. But it's for me a big thing to be able to host my brother, in
Hi, Avital.
event. Shalom, how are you then? Very good to see you.
Mina.
Okay. So I would like to start with a small story. I think I was 18 or 19 the first time I was in the US, and I was there, I think a couple of days after we arrived. There was Memorial Day, and frankly I was quite shocked for how Memorial Day is celebrated in the US, because it's so different from what I know from Israel. Just a moment, I see you might hear my old babies, so I'll put earplugs. That's a good way to vanish kids. And I remember this shock that I had to how it's so different. And we spoke about it. You don't? Ah, okay. Thank you, Bob. So I thought about this difference, and it's something about the culture, because in Israel, everyone knows a soldier. Most of the people were soldiers by themselves, or if I wasn't a soldier, so my brother, my father, my neighbors. And of course that because of that and because of Israel had, unfortunately, a lot of wars. And well, the situation in Israel is that everyone knows someone that died as a soldier. And because of that, I thought about this conversation, because it's not just about a story of one person or one soldier that died. It's also about a culture and the differences and what happens in Israel, and how it affects our life as a person and as a society due to the service in the army. So from that, I would like to start. Excuse me. Okay, so I think I will just, if it's fine, I'll just mute all, and whoever wants to ask questions, please raise your hands or write at the chat what it's better and better to you. Okay, and I want to invite my dear brother Itai, and that I'm very happy to host him and to speak with him. A little bit about yourself, just the people who don't know you will know a little bit who you are.
Well, now I'm mostly known as Avital's big brother, as that's my biggest title now.
Accepted that.
Yeah, I accepted that a long time ago. 45 now, almost 45. I work for, like most of Israelis my age, I work for Israeli high-tech companies for a long time now. I'm actually working from Israel for an American company. I have 4 boys. And with this coronavirus going on now, I mostly spend my time cooking for them.
Maybe we'll just jump into the conversation. I will say that we will have 3 parts of the conversation. The first one will be just a little bit about how was your army service, Itai, and the second will be how it affects you as an individual person, and the third as a society, as we said before. So I will just start with the question about what is like your first meaningful memory from the army?
Well, I would say that my first meaningful memory of the army is not mine. It's my father's. Our father immigrated from Switzerland in the 70s, in the early 70s. I was born in 75. And I can actually really remember when he was drafted to the army. We were living in a community in Kiryat Ono that had many immigrants. And I can remember him and some of the congregation members going to the basic training together. I don't even remember what year it was. I think I was 4 or 5. I can remember where they were drafted. I remember when they were walking together to be drafted. I remember when they finished their basic training, we had some kind of ceremony in the camp in middle of nowhere where they finished their training. And I have a very, very strong memory from 82 when I was 7. I remember when he was called to go to the first Lebanon war. And I remember as a very young kid, just understanding the meaning of that, of the father going to war. I really remember that as a very strong memory. So I think this is not something that is only mine, but everyone in Israel has a memory of someone close or himself going to the army, since every man has to go to the army when they're 18 or 19. Basically everybody's part of the army in some way. So I guess it's not only my memory, and it went for a long time. When he was called for reserve duty, I remember my father doing a reserve duty very close to the yeshiva where I was learning when I was already a soldier in Lebanon. I mean, we were both in the army in the same time. So it went on for a very long time.
You were 3 years in Lebanon, right?
Yeah, I did my basic training and communication course in Israel, and then I served the rest of my service in Lebanon. I was almost a year and a half in the eastern side of Lebanon, in the city of Marjayoun, and then almost a year and a half in the western side of Lebanon in a town called Bin Jbel.
Can you tell us some, I don't know, even just short memories about just a little bit about the experience of serving in Lebanon? Just that we will have some of the feeling.
Yeah,
about
well, I can think of few things. First would be, I was in Lebanon in 2 very different times. In my first service in Lebanon, I was in a yeshiva in Ma'ale Gilboa. That meant that I did a year and a half in the army, went back to yeshiva for another year, and then I went back to the army for the rest of my army service for another year and a half. So this year in the middle, that was 96, everything changed in Lebanon. It turned from someplace that was quite dangerous to a place where you could lose your life every day. If in my first service, we went into Lebanon in open vehicles, not armored vehicles, and it basically, we knew it was dangerous, but it wasn't, of course it was dangerous, but when you do something every day, it just becomes regular. You don't think every second of the threat to your life, because you do the same road every week, sometimes 2-3 times a week. So going from Israel to the camp inside Lebanon was like 20-25 minutes ride. So you just get used to it.
Do you remember your first time there? Were you afraid?
My first time was, you could say it was funny. I didn't know anything about Lebanon then. It was my first time going in. And I thought I was so lucky that I met a friend, brother of one of my best friends from yeshiva. And his brother was an officer in the Golani brigades. And he was in charge of the convoy going from Metula, in this northern city of Israel, to Mar Jayun. And I got there, it was my first time, I didn't know anything. So I came to him and said, Hillel, can you please set me up, help me? It's my first time going in. And he said, don't worry, I will help you. We were going like 200 meters into Lebanon. And then all radio shouted like we were shot at. Everybody got out of the vehicles, jumping and pointing the guns in all way. And I didn't know what I was doing. I jumped out. I laid on the ground. I was so afraid. I didn't know what's going on. And then he like tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Welcome to Lebanon. This is just a drill. Let's go." So this was my first 5 minutes in Lebanon. But he got me a good place on a car that was open, was great weather, great scenery, and the rest of the drive to Mar Jayun was excellent. I was there not as in a combat unit. I was trained as a communication, encryption and communication officer. At this point, computer communication was somewhat new, and encryption in communication was very big. And there was a need to transfer data, either it was messages, instant messages, or even long secret data from the standpoints in Lebanon to the main Israeli headquarters. And we also had some radio encryption. So my job was to make sure before doing some special operations usually within Lebanon had the knowledge and the equipment to communicate in an encrypted way that would not be heard by Hezbollah. That means I worked with every combat unit there is. So I used to just go meet them for 2, 3, 4 days, whatever they used to do. Most of them, I didn't even know what they were going to do. Sometimes I would, and that would be even scarier because I would send the plans. We could get in an encrypted way what they should do, the plans, the orders, and sometime I would know before they would even know where they're going or what they have to do. I would know that before them, and I would go and help them get ready for something they had no idea what it is. So in that way, I met hundreds of soldiers from every combat unit in the Israeli army. And I was with them just before and sometime during the beginning, the walk to where they would do their operations. And this way I met sometimes for very brief moments, but then sometimes for a few days or weeks, people that would later die in those operations. So death was like an everyday thing. But it's something that you, as a young soldier, you don't even think about it. Most of the soldiers just waiting for the minute that they will be ambushed. It's something that as an adult, I think is crazy. But as a young soldier, you're practically eager to, you've been training for so long and you've been waiting for so long. So most of the, especially infantry soldiers, were really eager to be ambushed. It's funny to say, but it's like the atmosphere that was in Lebanon.
Can you tell, like, can you share with us, like, one of the most, I don't know, the hardest moments that you had there?
Okay, for me individually, I think it's again, with all the sadness, those things turn out, if you come back alive, most of them return as, I don't want to say good memories, but there are memories, and sometimes they're quite funny. I was going on a convoy to Druze village named Chatzbaya, which is in an even like an hour drive north of Mar Jayun. And when you got to the stand post, there was a gate under the first gate that someone that got there had to leave the vehicle, open the gate, so the convoy would go in, and then you should close the gate. And nobody wanted that job. It was the worst job because you were on your own, out in the open for anyone. It was like sitting ducks. So we used to have some game to choose who's gonna be closing the gate. It was the first time I lost in this game. So I went out of the vehicle. I opened the gate, there were 5 or 6 there were a tank, 2 armored vehicles, and 2 Mercedes, which was the vehicle that most of the officers used to drive because it was the most common vehicle in the Lebanese roads. And then I had to close the gate and go in by foot. That was like 400 or 500 meters walking up the hill. So the second I closed the gate, there was a very big blast that was supposed to blow one of the cars, but they were already inside, and I was closing the gate, and I was very lucky. I got hit with just the shreds of the bombs that were flying right in my bottom. And I remember that I was lying there on the ground. The doctor ran to see that I'm okay. And I said, I'm okay, everything is okay. And he just took the metal piece that was stuck and just shoved it out. I was bleeding, nothing serious, but he was sewing he didn't make sure that anesthesia was working. But it was quite funny, and everybody was laughing about this, especially when I had to call my mother and tell her that I'm okay. I started the conversation, do you remember the movie Forrest Gump? Do you remember when he was shot? Well, something like that. I had to tell her, yeah, I see she remembers that. So, no, I was very lucky then, I know that. But there were also things that today, when I think back, they look crazy to me. They used to shoot missiles on anti-tanks missiles on the convoys, and there were old Russian Sagar missiles. At least in the beginning of my days in Lebanon, then they got some more advanced and faster missiles. But in the first years, they were using those Sagar missiles, and they were coming at you as a big red dot. And every time we saw someone shooting those missiles at us, what you should do is everybody shouted missiles, missiles. The convoy stopped. Everybody went out of the car they were in and started shooting at the missile. It was a crazy and stupid, but that was the instruction, because the guy that shot him the missiles, he was holding a stick. And once we shot at him, he used to just look down, and by that, the missile would hit the ground and not hit us. So I remember 4 or 5 times just standing in the open, seeing a huge red dot coming towards me and standing and shooting at it like crazy. But that were the instructions, and we just did it as we were told.
There is a moment that it struck you that it's dangerous and not just your daily routine?
I don't think we didn't even think about it. It was our everyday, and it was the routine, it was the instructions, and we just did as we were instructed. I think that's why you pick soldiers at this age. They just do what they're told. They react instinctively. But we had like an everyday life. We were there for weeks. We used to be 2-3 weeks in Lebanon and then go back home for a week or few days. And we had our relaxed moments. For me, the most important moment of the week was Friday, just before Shabbos. I was a communication soldier, so I always had a phone line to call home. So Fridays we used to call the family and say, hi, Shabbat Shalom, and everything is okay. I always called my grandfather, and from all my cousins, they all served their time in Lebanon. That's something that all of them told me before I started my duty in Lebanon. He said, when you're talking to Saba, when you're talking to grandfather, when he asks you where you are, don't say you're in southern Lebanon, just say you're in the south. So every Friday I would call my grandfather, say Shabbat Shalom, where are you? Oh, I'm in the south. Oh, in the south, then you're safe, everything is okay, Shabbat Shalom. And then we would try to scatter 10 people for the minyan of Erev Shabbat. And that would be like the high point of the week, having Shabbos daven, sometimes out in the open, hoping no mortar shells will fall. Sometimes it was in the main base with a proper synagogue. And if we had 10 men, that would be, I think, the best part of the week. And if I was in a big base in Mar Jayun, then sometimes we will have an Orthodox unit from a yeshiva. The guys from the yeshivot is there. They used to be together in the same unit. So we always prayed to have Benish, it's called, Bnei Yeshivot unit, because if we had them, then we would have 4 months we will have minyan every Shabbos. So that every 4 months, the units used to switch. So for us, that was a good thing. If we had a unit with the Orthodox yeshiva guys, then we would know that we will have 4 months of minyanim.
Well, you said a couple of minutes ago, the fact that you were 18 was very helpful. And maybe that could lead us to our second part that I want to ask you today, as a grown-up, as a father, how it affects you, your experience in the army.
Well, basically, I'm not done with the army. Well, we didn't discuss this, but between 97 and 99, I wasn't 18 when I went to the army. I was 19 because I had an extra year in a yeshiva. It was the first year of the yeshiva in Ma'ale Gilboa, and we were 33 guys. And in 99, that means 3 years after or 4 years after we started our army duty, 4 guys died in the 4 of 33. And as funny or happy times as it was, especially in my second shift in Lebanon, it wasn't scary anymore. It could be terrifying when thinking back. Every week we were losing someone, and being the guy that sends everyone to their missions, I knew tons of person. I tried to count at some time, but I just stopped at a point because it was pointless. There's like every week or two, there were more people. There were like between 97 to 99, I think 9. I'm talking about good friends that either we were together in the yeshiva or in the same army unit. Died in a different. It wasn't only in Lebanon because there were bad times in Israel, then also outside of Lebanon. And even before we started our army service, 3 months before we started it, one of the guys from the yeshiva was hijacked and killed by Hamas, Arik Frankenthal. He was the first. It was my first army funeral, and I wasn't even drafted then. And in a few months, we started living this crazy routine of going to funerals and meeting people. Would be a routine because we wouldn't meet during the army service because everyone was in his own unit. We used to meet when we had the funeral, someone we knew. And I can remember a conversation I had with my mother. I think it was after a week of 3 funerals, I came home. I was in my room. I didn't know what to do with myself because of course there was any therapy or something like that. We were just supposed to be strong, don't cry, be a man. And I had a very long talk with my mother about the Yom Kippur War in 73, when there's so many of her in Bnei Akiva there for in the same year that got killed, and we had a very long talk about, and I didn't know how we could just go on living when every day you were losing friends. And you would assume that would end once you finish your army service. But I got out of the army in 98, and in 99 I started my reserve duty. In 2002, and every year you have like 30 days of reserve training. So you're never out. You're always in some way getting ready for your next mission. And in 2002 was the defensive shield, Chomat Magen, after the explosion in the Park Hotel in Netanya. I remember I was already married, and I was in reserve duty for 45 days, right out of Kalkilia, which is a village that is, I think, less than 2 kilometers from my parents' house in Kochav Yair. And we were there for 45 days trying to get back. So I didn't know anything about most of the soldiers used to spend some time in the Western Bank. I was never there. I didn't know how to. For me, all the army was Lebanon, and then later my reserve army unit. We went back in 2006. Was the second Lebanon war. Since I had the knowledge and I knew the perimeter, I was going, instead of just being with the commanding officers, I joined actually a fighting battalion in the western area of Lebanon, where our reserve elite unit was just sitting in a house, and they were hit by missiles, and we lost 6 friends there. So it didn't end when I finished my army duty. There were later on all the Gaza operations, Oferet Yitzuka, Tzuk Eitan, all these names that we, Cast Lead, Pillar of Defense, Protective Edge, all these names they give for these operations. But for us, it means just quit your everyday life, put on your uniform, and become 18 again. Because when I had kids, I thought I would never do these crazy things again. I would not just stand in front of missiles coming at me and will shoot at it, or run into waiting to be ambushed someplace just to be able to fire back, or sit waiting for terrorists to come forward and shoot at them first, like it's like a contest who's gonna draw first. But you find yourself in those situations and you understand that it's not just you as a person, it's something that is bigger. It's something that is, I think, inside of any one of us. And I'm pretty sure that if I will ask you to jump into a tank and shoot, you can, even with all the years, you will remember how to do that. Because it's something that you did so many times. You've done the drill so many times. Your body just reacts. Sometimes it's a little bit slower because you're not 18 anymore. But it still happens. And I must say that 2 years ago, when they told me, I also, my reserved army unit was also kind of an elite combat unit. So we were always first to be called. And when they told me 2 years ago that because of my age, I have to quit, it kind of hurt. Like, they don't need you anymore. You're too old. So most of people would just say, yeah, I'm out, finally. But somehow it kind of hurts that they don't need you anymore. And thank God for the Home Front Command, who still needs communication officers. And in these Corona times, they need people to help them and manage all the operations. And still, I got a phone call 2 weeks ago if I want to join the reserve duty again, because they need some more communication officers.
Itai, do you, in your daily life, can you tell or can you identify how it affects you, or is it affect you?
Yeah, of course.
All of those things?
These are things that I think they're become part of my subconscious. I would go, let's say, I will go with my kids hiking in the forest when it's allowed, not now. And my first thoughts would be, we should be higher or lower on the hill, because you always must go on 2/3 of the height to be hidden, but to be still on top of some attack that might hit you. And which stone would be the best to jump and hide behind. So these things are they're automatic. They just happen. You hear like you go hiking up north and you see some combat unit training, and I will tell my kids, no, don't worry, it's not this boom you've just heard. That's our shots. It's not incoming, because it's a different sound and can still hear it. Well, some people, there's some kind of 120 millimeter motors that everybody knows how they sound. They have they're swirling, so you have the kind of a shriek before they hit the ground. So you see a movie, a war movie, and say, nah, it's impossible. You didn't switch the magazines. You can't go shooting like that. It just lives with you. It's not something that you can explain. It's so deep inside. The way you react to the world, you always, and there's always the be ready, always, like sense of be ready.
It's interesting because I'm thinking now, not just as you as a person. Unfortunately, you had all this experience that a lot of people in Israel have or had. And the thing that I'm now curious is about, what do you think, how it affects the society in Israel? That some of them had quite relatively good experience or calm experience in the army, and some had, like yours, or even chas v'chalila worse. But the question is, what it makes our society different, how it makes it different, or how it affects the Israel society.
Well, thinking of, there's with this coronavirus now, there's a new Facebook group in Israel, stories from the Lebanon post-holds. And I think like in 10 days, it's got to 30 or 40,000 people just sharing their experience. And nobody talked about it. It was our everyday, and we finished with that. And someone else came back and did that instead of us. And the fact that so many people are now sharing the experience, I think it made me realize that it's like every generation in Israel has their story or their theme. If it's the generation that fought for the establishment of the country, then there was the generation fighting and in Jerusalem 67, 73, those who were, I know, they had the worst time, I think, it was the worst war we had. Then there was in 82 Lebanon war, and there was us in the 90s. That was our shift. And the influence, it was, I think it's tens of thousands of soldiers that are, living with the feeling that they're lucky to be alive. We're so many friends that you talked about the difference in Memorial Day. And the Memorial Day in Israel, basically everybody I know go to a cemetery where he has a friend buried there. And we meet there every year, the same people. And basically, in the beginning, we were a year older than them, 2 years older than them. Then we got married, then we had kids. Then our kids, my son just had his first army draft testings, which everyone has when they're 16 and a half. Just starting their way into the army. And the thought is, what would happen if they would be alive? And so we're lucky. We're the lucky ones. And I think it's crazy that tens of thousands of people live with this, because it has to mean something. There must be a purpose. The reason that I'm alive, I need to do something. And everywhere you look, the people of Israel are so happy. We have the best happiness measurements in the world. Everybody's happy here. And you say, how can you be happy in a country like that? That everybody, you're always in war. It seems like we're always struggling. But I think the fact that we're basically, we know what's the cost of us living here. And grateful to be alive, grateful for those who are not. Israel is a small country. Even now with the corona, every person that dies has a name. They're talking about him personally. You can do that in a small country. You can't do that anywhere else. Every life matters here. And it's something that goes always. And I think that it has tremendous influence on us because we know there's a purpose, maybe. We need to justify the fact that we're here. And we're always alert. We always react. We say what we think. We don't wait to anyone else to respond. We just speak our mind because you must. If you feel that, even if there's a commander, if you think someone's going to shoot at you, you just overrule everyone and you do whatever you think. It's part of being Israeli, I think.
It's interesting because at the beginning it was like really beautiful. I'm lucky, and because of that I have a purpose in my life. But then I wanted to ask you, is it only like this good way of looking? And then you said like, oh, and by the way, all the intense Israeli it's also connected to that.
Yes, I think the best word to describe Lebanon is improvise. You don't have enough ammunition, improvise. You don't have a machine gun, no problem. Take 2 M16, put them on 2 magazines and shoot both guns together. Then you have a machine gun. If you don't have a machine gun, you don't have water, find water. You don't have communication, find a way to get communication. Then you improvise. And I think
that could explain a lot of like how Americans sometimes look at the Israelis as with a lot of chutzpah and a lot of innovative mind. So it's interesting how you connect it to our society and to our community. Oh, thank you so much. Do anyone wants to ask a question or to say something? So please do. Someone wants to just.
Of course. I will never let a Zoom go without me saying something. I have to say something. Oh, is that your volume or mine? It's very funny. First of all, I heard everything you said, and I just want to say I relate to it because when I go to my mother in the bungalow colony, that's the same feeling I get that you described now. But I did want to say, I think one of the good things that comes out of all this is what they say in Hebrew, the achdus, that you feel when you go to Israel. Even today, I got I don't know if it was an email or a Facebook or something where a man was walking around a building of an old age home with a guitar. And he just started playing some beautiful music for the elderly people. I don't know if anyone else saw that, but there's tremendous achdut in Israel. Pesach, when that everybody went outside and I know that in Yerushalayim, I think all over Israel, they were saying the Manashtana outside.
Yeah.
It's a country of togetherness like you never see. We have something like that here, but you hardly see anybody going out to clap for the people. But in Israel, it's like everybody went out on their porches and they were saying the Manashtana. And I think that's one of the things that makes Israel beautiful and special to other people from outside of Israel, and they want that. They yearn for that. That's why so many people, I think, make Aliyah, because they love the Achdut of Israel. They're not all going to fight in Lebanon. Yeah, we would be scared to fight in Lebanon. But a lot of people want the Israeli way of life, which is Achdut. So, Itai, you look great, and I loved everything you said. And this was great.
Thank you.
I think I wanted to say something, Yaakov. You're so right, because in the army, they don't ask you where you were born, or what's your education, or how smart you are, or how much money you have. They just take some guys together, mash them together. You're a unit. That's it. You're a unit. And you get to know all kind of people that you would never meet. And I think once you fought with these kind of guys, you can never look at other people differently. And I think between us, we fight hard and we love hard, because we love everybody and we hate everybody at the same time.
Okay. Thank you so much, Itai. Thank you for all who came. And I know that also the JCC in Providence have a great things and interesting things for Yom Hazikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut, and I hope to see some of you there. And thank you for joining us. For me, it was very interesting conversation, because although it's my brother, we are not, as daily speak about those issues. So thank you for the opportunity that I had to speak like that with my brother, and that we will all have a peaceful and healthy week, with a blessing to the refuah of all the people who are sick, and the refuat, when we pray the prayer to the refuah to heal, we say refuat hanefesh verefuat haguf, that we pray that people will feel healthy also in their body, but also in their mind and soul. And I think that it was just one way to look at it, about the healthiness of mind and soul and the body. And with this wish for a good and healthy week, we will conclude that. And good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
evening.
Avital.
Bye.
Very good to see you. Goodbye.